Now, one lawmaker who would like to see tougher sentences for protesters who block roads is Likud Member of Parliament Dan Illouz, who earlier today published what appeared to be the draft of a bill that would sentence such protesters to 3 years in prison, although he later clarified that the timing of that announcement today was premature, had actually been an error. Well, here with us now is Likud Member of Parliament Dan Illouz. Dan, could you explain why you think 3 years in prison is justified? And if you do believe that, why not push such a bill through now if you do think it's justified?
So first of all, I think that we need tougher sanctions against people who block roads. You're talking about people who are stopping ambulances, cars, people with their families. It can be dangerous for people's lives, and it can definitely be very uncomfortable, and it definitely is hurting the freedom of movement of people. We have a freedom of protest, but it needs to be balanced with the freedom of movement. And it's something which is not accepted everywhere in the world. Blocking roads is not an accepted or legitimate way of protesting. And so it shouldn't be accepted here in Israel. I do want to say that the bill that I drafted and that was published, I don't expect to bring it up for a vote as long as the current protests are in action in Israel. And the reason is simple. I don't think that it's good for the optics that the government is trying to make it seem as if the government is trying to hurt the current protests. I think that it's something that needs to change in Israeli culture, but I don't want it to be seen as if I'm doing it specifically against the current protests. It's something that I think is true for every protest, whether it's ultra-Orthodox people blocking roads, whether it's a blockage of roads that happened during the protests against the disengagement, which I was firmly opposed to the disengagement, but also opposed at blocking roads, or the current protests. I think it's a broader issue that needs to exist in order to change the culture of protests that there are in Israel and make it more legitimate and on par with the things that are accepted all around the democratic world.
Sure, I understand that, Dan. I've seen at least, there's been at least 3 evacuations of unauthorized settlements or outposts in the West Bank in the past few months at Or Chaim, at the Nachlat Chen, Olive Grove, where protesters have been clashing with police. What would be the minimum sentence for those protesters if you would give 3 years to someone who blocks a road?
I think there's a clear difference between someone who's blocking roads, stopping ambulances from helping give health care to people, stopping the economic life of the country, and the examples that you're comparing. Again, whoever is raising their hands against policemen or things like that, I'm not sure that actually happened, but if it happened, then they should be punished for it. And that's definitely clear. And by the way, they're often punished for it. When it comes to the blocking of roads as a means of protest, I think that's something that needs to be removed from Israeli culture. And again, it's something that all around the world, you don't see this blockage of roads as something that's accepted. When it does happen all around the world, the people are punished for it. And if people will want to do it afterwards, then they'll need to be punished for it. I do also want to just point out that the bill that I brought up was copy-pasted from an earlier bill proposed by Israel Beiteinu, which is why the 3 years is there. I also said very clearly today that I'm not attached to the 3 years. If it's a big knas.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Then I want to ask you, today, 4 major business organizations in the country, the Manufacturers Association, the Builders Association, the Chambers of Commerce, all came out calling on the government to at least slow down for the time being these judicial reforms. I'm asking you as a self-described, I guess, conservative, why shouldn't the government be listening to the leaders of business, the leaders of the private sector here?
I think that we've been very clear that we're open for dialogue, that we're open for conversation, that all that you need to do in order to get conversations going is to convince Yair Lapid to stop boycotting conversations and come and sit down on the table and have these conversations. We've been supporting the president's efforts at getting conversations going. I'm not sure we'll support his plan because
why not? Dan, why wouldn't you support his plan if that would find?
Because I don't know what's in it, so I can't support or not support it until I know what's in it. When I'll know what's in it, then I'll be able to give an actual answer. But his efforts is something that I definitely support. I think he's he's on the right path of just getting people to sit down and talk.
Clearly, some members of your own party, reportedly in the faction meeting today, are expressing concerns over the pace in which this is going.
I think that what we're doing is very responsible. We're going through the whole due process in the Knesset. We're being very careful to go according to due process. And what we need to do is, if there's going to be serious conversations, then we'll be able to slow down in order to give conversations a chance. But as long as they're not talking to us, then there's no reason for us to slow down.
All right, Likud member of Knesset, Dan Illouz, thank you for joining us on I-24 News.